that, I'm delighted that you're with us this evening. You're urging Liz Truss to be more radical with her plans. What exactly are you calling on the potential next Prime Minister to do?
Well, I'm asking her to put growth first in decisions about taxes. I mean, what's happened so far in this government is that the Treasury have said, you know, that there can be no more borrowing, and that any spending must be paid for on the nail, so to speak. But and therefore, the Chancellor Rishi Sunak put up taxes on quite a big scale, and not only did he not index the tax threshold allowances, so income taxes are going up for an awful lot of people, but he also proposed to put up corporation tax to 25%, and he also put up the national insurance contributions, all of which are very bad for growth. And so my point really is that growth should come first. We should have a tax system that favors growth, and then we can see, once we've got that system in place, so we maximize the growth prospect, we can then make sure that over the long term, whatever we borrow to finance those taxes in the meantime is affordable through having spending that's in line with that over the long term. And that's the way to do it, not to kind of say you can't borrow and you've got to then raise taxes, which then kill off growth.
But what you're talking about here are bigger tax cuts, bigger VAT cuts, and potentially much bigger public spending. I mean, those could all have an impact on inflation, which is not within the Prime Minister's control, and that could be really damaging for families.
No, I don't think this will have an impact on inflation that's bad. I think actually it will help the Bank of England to do what's necessary to bring down inflation. Because one of the things that stops the Bank of England doing what it needs to do, which is to raise interest rates somewhat to tighten money, is that they're worried it'll cause a recession. Now, if fiscal policy, as we call it, you know, if the state through its taxes heads off a recession, that'll make the Bank of England much more confident in doing what needs to be done to stop inflation. So I think it works the other way, actually.
And let's just be clear, because Liz Truss has said that she respects your views on this. What exactly do you think the next Prime Minister should do when it comes to tax cuts? How big should they be?
Well, it comes in various bits, you see. First of all, there's been a rise in taxes, ordinary taxes of income taxes, because the thresholds haven't been indexed to inflation. And so that's brought in a lot of extra taxes, which really shouldn't have been brought in. So the first thing she can do is actually cut VAT to offset quickly the effect of those big tax increases through not indexing tax thresholds of inflation. So inflation is already raising taxes, and that needs to be reversed. So that can be reversed by a quick cut in VAT. And then on top of that, she needs to reverse all these other tax increases, you know, corporation tax and the national insurance contributions, all of which damage growth. So that's the starting point. And then I think it needs to go on in the next budget to actual tax cutting that puts growth first. And then we get the economy in a good place where it's got the best prospects for growth, you know, so that businesses and entrepreneurs have an environment where it really pays to innovate. That's the key thing. And also workers, you know, aren't clobbered with all sorts of taxes that actually push up their wages and push up the cost to employers. So it's growth that's got to come first. And then, you know, to make sure that we can deal with all the debt that is needed to finance those tax cuts, we need to cut our coat according to our cloth over the long term, and, you know, see what the growth in revenues is and fit the spending to that, not the other way around. Spend a lot like a bunch of drunken sailors and then put up taxes that murders the economy.
I just want to ask you very briefly, Professor, before we go. You have a report out that's coming out later on tonight. You're very critical of the Office for Budget Responsibility in that report. Should it be scrapped, in a word, yes or no?
I think it could be a useful bureaucracy, but it needs to work for the government, not for you know, these this sort of rule-based idea that you can't borrow at any cost. It needs to work, I think, for a number 10 as a bureaucracy to do the sums properly for what needs to be done for growth, and then, you know, then draws out the implications of the long term of how much spending we can afford. I think that's all worth doing, but it needs to be done in a completely different way that puts growth first and makes sure that our coat, you know, is then cut according to that cloth.
Well, we will see if Liz Truss, if she makes it into number 10, takes up your advice, Professor Patrick Minford. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Sure.